episode was brought to you by New Black. They are redefining retail with Eva, a contextual commerce platform that unifies inventory and order management, POS, in-store apps, promotions, loyalty, and clienteling into one seamless system. This is Eva, this is New Black. I'm here in London today for the first episode of our series in partnership with Shoptalk Europe. I am joined by Arianne Parisi, the Global Chief Digital Officer at JD Sports. Arianne has built an impressive career leading digital transformation for major brands, from driving omnichannel growth at Finish Line to now overseeing the global digital strategy for JD Sports, a powerhouse with over 4,500 stores across 30+ countries. She's constantly pushing the boundaries of how brands engage with consumers in a digital-first world. Under her leadership, JD Sports is redefining what it means to shop. Today, we'll dive into her journey, the biggest innovations in retail, and what is next for the future of shopping. Here's Paula Macadi, and this is episode 58 of my show. Welcome to OFFBounds. Arianne, it's such a pleasure to have you here in London with me. Welcome to OFFBounds.
Thank you. So good to be here.
All right. I have a lot of questions because you have such a challenging role. And I think like in retail in general, everybody's trying to go digital. You don't have any choice actually. But you are in a position of doing that in a scale that for JD Sports is such a massive retailer, right? Like with so many stores, so many countries. When you accepted the role to be the Chief Digital Officer, what were the main things that you saw that needed to be done?
Wow. Well, it's a great question. And actually, it's funny because our complexity has just continued to increase since I've started this role. So I think we're now at over 4,500 stores, and a lot of those are via acquisition, right? So we've made some significant acquisitions in Europe and in the US. And so the landscape just keeps getting more and more complex. So I would say I did not anticipate that level of acceleration of growth and really the complexity that would add beyond just being a global business, right? Which is so fun. We keep at a really fast pace. So I think the challenge has just been how do you simplify the complex and how do you focus? Because we have 1 million priorities and it is so easy to get caught up in all of those. But our prioritization of the customer and the omnichannel experience has been a very clear one. So with our digital transformation, we have a massive opportunity just to up-level our online to offline capabilities. And so I would say that very clearly is like our major focus, right? Is kind of disassembling what in some cases has been a bit of a siloed business and then reassembling that in a customer-centric kind of way. And so digital transformation for us is really that's the most significant part of it.
If you're talking about acquisitions, that makes it a lot more complex.
Yeah, it does. It does,
every company comes with different cultures, different silos, and you have to dismantle everything.
Well, and we have a mindset, honestly, of not being global just for the sake of it. So we have a lot of autonomy within our businesses as well. So my role is really about creating strategic principles and a framework. And some of that means consistency for the JD brand in particular. But we have other fascias where we allow for that autonomy and we look for efficiencies of scale, but we don't try to reinvent the wheel or try to do it all, right? Because it doesn't always add value.
But you have been going through a replatforming, right?
Yes.
And
multiple.
And I think each of these businesses come with their own platforms.
They do.
Right?
Yes.
What is, when you're talking about replatforming and this big digital transformation, acquisitions, what are other metrics that you mention that you think of as success that are not just sales and revenue?
I have been contemplating a lot just the transformation around our KPIs. And I think that sales and revenue, what I love about retail is that you have a daily scorecard, right? So sales and revenue are obviously the most important metrics. But what we're trying to do is introduce some more long-term measures so that we aren't just goaling ourselves on what's in front of us, but more so looking at the long term. So we're thinking a lot about brand love and our brand health index. So when we think about our marketing spend, it's not just the immediacy of driving a sale, it's what's the long-term acquisition play, right? What's the brand awareness play? How do we start to build that?
And how do you measure that?
Well,
That's the challenge.
We're learning. Yeah, we're learning. But there's a lot of market studies that we've started to do, and we're now indexing ourselves kind of against a baseline so we can see our growth. And the maturity of JD by market is so wildly varied, right? So we want to think about brand health, brand love, and our brand awareness as kind of a measuring stick. And then what are the different strategies we put into those markets? Where do we spend our funds? How do we think about investing, depending on the maturity level of the market? So it's very different in the UK than it is in a lot of our European countries, or even in the US, which obviously is a massive, geographical space to play in. So
it speaks the same language, but they're still so diverse.
It's so diverse, and it's so hard to make an impact when you're trying to grow a brand. 4 years ago, no one had heard of JD in the US. And now it's finally when I'm on the streets of New York and someone compliments my sneakers, I can be like, oh, I got them at JD, and they know what I'm talking about. So that's a major, that's like the anecdotal, non-quantitative way to do it. But we have a lot of ways to measure brand health. And then we're also really getting regimented about NPS and having a global kind of universal view of NPS so that we can have that as a long-term measure of health as well.
That's very interesting. And you just mentioned being global in different markets and etc. I think that must be another challenge, right? Because you have to be consistent across all markets, but it's still localized.
Yes, absolutely.
What have you learned about doing this journey?
So we are, I'd say, back to what I mentioned, we have incredibly empowered autonomous teams in every geography. So I've now had the pleasure of visiting a lot of our teams in the local markets, as far and wide as Thailand and Malaysia. And really, we empower those teams locally. And that's kind of one of our mantras, just both for the customer and for our internal teams, right, is to kind of have this global brand where we're empowered locally and make it relevant. So I think without those local teams, we wouldn't know the nuances of the market. And again, my role is to create a framework where we can all kind of operate with the same strategic principles, but then really have teams on the ground locally who understand our specific customer and can tailor, if it's content, if it's copy, if it's just kind of the nuances of assortment even. We have buying teams in every market, right? So they're really in touch and in tune with local consumers.
So I'll have, if I buy here, if I buy in Thailand, I'll have the same feeling when I come to a JD store or shop online, but maybe different products or different ways to shop.
Yeah, exactly. And the cool thing, so I'm in retail, right? I love product. The cool thing is that we'll see a trend spark in one market, and we'll be able to kind of pick that up and understand maybe where that trend is going to go. So sometimes something will pick up in Europe and it won't yet have hit in the US.
You have an
and
example?
Vice versa. Well, the Adidas Samba and the comeback of the Samba was something we were very early on. And so we caught that. I want to say it was like out of Thailand where we saw it start to really spark. And our buying teams were like, whoa, what is this? Like this reemergence of this trend. And so we were able to kind of, get some exclusivity in other markets and buy into that product early. So we try to have like this global engine of insight that we can, disseminate globally, but it's tough to do, to communicate that, but definitely an advantage for us.
Absolutely. And now everybody wears it, right?
I know. Yeah, I actually have it on my feet right now. I'm not going to put my foot on the table, but I do have Sambas on right now. And so that's obviously been, the comeback of Adidas and the Tito and all of that product has been just fascinating to watch. And it's been so fun to see it kind of spark globally.
Absolutely. That's so interesting. We are here because this is a series that I'm doing in partnership with Shoptalk Europe, right?
Yes.
And that's when we met the first time, actually.
Yes.
Was last year at Shoptalk Europe. And you'll be on stage talking about the unified commerce part of the business, which is basically the whole business, I would say.
Right.
But it's nice that they have like 5 themes, which is unified commerce, physical store, retail media, and loyalty, and then unified commerce, of course.
Yeah.
And that's very nice, like that we're meeting again in Barcelona.
Yeah.
But I'd love to know, what is specific about the European market that you see from JD point of view?
Yeah. So this has been interesting for me to learn as an American coming into a business that, is historically UK based, that has tried to grow into Europe and into the US. I think the first thing I'd call out is just like that Europe is not homogenous. And I think we tend to say, oh, Europe, right? And like actually because we operate in Scandinavia, we operate in Italy, we operate in France and Germany, and the consumer is so wildly different. So culturally, that's obvious, but then behaviorally, there are trends in Germany related to buy now, pay later, or related to returns rate that are just like shocking relative to how other countries, behave or consumers.
Is it very low?
Oh, returns are so high. No, the returns rate is so high. It's wild. So we have to really like adapt and understand the root of it. What are the competitive forces in the market? What's the history of retail in that country? And it like has a long influence. Or for example, I love this one, like in Spain, the penetration of online is just lower because people are out on the street. And so street side retail, in person really matters. And it's unlikely that you'll ever kind of see digital penetration push to too high. So that's been my first learning, is just like the diversity of each of the markets we operate in demands expertise relative to those markets. And the easiest thing to do if you are a UK retailer is to be really UK-centric, right? And try to take your brand, your operating model, and just plop it into those countries. And so we're on the path now of just making sure we have that, again, that it's that right balance of global versus local, and finding the teams, the right teams in market who can kind of help guide us in that, right? And then, I think that the other thing is just making sure that over time we evolve at the pace of those markets and understand what the consumers kind of are forward-looking, what they're going to want from us.
I have a theory from someone that lived in Portugal.
Yes.
I lived in many countries, but I lived in Portugal in the last 3 years, and I struggle buying online because things don't arrive on time.
Portugal is tough.
It's so hard.
It's really tough. Yeah.
I think I just don't shop more online because the experience isn't just good.
Yeah, it's really tough.
It's better to get an Uber, go to the shop and come back.
Yes. Well, this is the discovery, I'll say, of someone who, and again, I'm based in the US, and so
everything is so fast.
Well, and it's just taken time for me to understand each market and the nuance of it. And I remember it's like drinking through a fire hose when the team is telling me, okay, our restrictions in Portugal are XYZ. And it's because 5 years ago when we set up the business, we didn't have this permit. So, it's like just a legacy of a huge enterprise business like ours. You end up with these little tweaks over time that just have huge consequences down the line. So Portugal's a great example. It's hard to operate there. But if you're sitting in your chair in the US or in the UK, you don't really know what that experience is like. And so I think that's where it's important to just really root yourself in the experience, because like you said, I think we can easily glaze over it and not understand why we're not building customer loyalty. And actually, when you just get into it, you're like, oh, well, because our shipping times are terrible or whatever it is, right? So we have a lot to just uncover. And then we're on the path to like really figure out how we specialize in each market to deliver excellence.
That's very interesting. I would love to see data about Europe because they are very different.
Yeah.
But now I have something that is very unique in this season. There's our sponsor question.
Okay.
I actually have a video.
Hi Paula. Hi Arianne. Nice to meet you. I'm Pim Vijfterschild. I'm the Chief Commercial and Partner Officer of No Black. And I'm curious to understand how JD is making the selection for the right solution provider. And also, what are the criteria that you actually use then? I'm looking forward to your answer. Thanks.
So the vendor question is related to like, what is the process to select a solution? And I would go so far upstream of that and talk about not the solution yet, but like, what are the actual requirements and what are we trying to solve? So I think that the tendency, it's really easy to get obsessed with solutioning without really interrogating what are you trying to solve for, right? And I think that especially just, it's the way the market operates, right? You go to Shoptalk, you talk to all these vendors, there's so many shiny things, there's so many exciting ways to innovate, there's a lot we want to do. So we've started to get really rooted in a product team that their sole purpose is really designed around interrogating the customer experience and designing for what is the experience we want to deliver, right? So before we even think about solutioning, we say, what are the criteria of like where the customer pain points are and what are we solving for? And then that leads us to a path of then maybe what solutions are viable.
What would be the perfect path and who can help us?
Yeah. I think, we always go through, it's a little bit dry in some ways, right? We go through a standard RFP, we involve the right teams cross-functionally, and then ultimately we think about how, not just what that vendor partner is going to offer in terms of the solution, but are they a cultural fit, right? Like, are they going to work with us in the ways that make sense for our organization? And candidly, not everyone is a great cultural fit, right? There are some organizations that are better suited for certain partners.
They're a business for everybody, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So we think about solution fit, we think about cultural fit, we think about, do they meet the criteria? And then ultimately, like, what's the ROI, right? Like, what is this vendor going to deliver? And can we implement it at pace, right? What does it actually look like to integrate? Is that feasible? Is it achievable? And how much lift is it going to take to do that?
Yeah, and that goes perfectly with my next question, which is around AI.
Yes.
We were both at NRF, right?
Yes.
Last month, and
Yes.
it was so mind-blowing to see everything AI.
Yeah.
How is AI and automation in general supporting your work and JD in general?
Yes. Well, I think if you're not leveraging AI to help you write your emails or edit your emails, you're missing out, right? I think there's like the most obvious use cases are the day-to-day for all of us from a workplace efficiency standpoint. And I would say for JD, we adopt a lot of solutions from our partners that leverage AI, right? So I think we talked about Algolia when we last met, and obviously they have a massive, search engine that uses LLMs and adopts AI. But internally, I think our best use case is probably from within the customer care team, where our team actually built their own AI chatbot called Robert. And he is internally facing only, but he helps our agents and he helps our leadership team do all sorts of things. So it's super impressive what they've done. And actually the use case most recently, we do an engagement survey for our employees, and it comes back with like thousands of comments. It's like you solicit comments from it and there's thousands of comments. Well, how are you going to read through all of those? So they put that into Robert and said, give me, create a summary of like, what is the kind of key points of the employee engagement survey. So I think internally we're like looking for massive efficiency improvement and better insight from AI tools.
I think this is phenomenal because it's so hard to get feedback from the front line, right?
Yes.
Especially with so many stores.
Yes.
Sometimes they have an idea. They are the ones facing the customer.
Yeah.
And we can get the ideas of everybody.
Exactly.
So this is a very good use case.
And as a human, when you're filtering through that feedback, it's really easy to get distracted by like anecdotal light items and kind of the recency bias of like, oh, I just read this comment. That's the one that matters. So when you put it through AI and it really synthesizes it for you, it's like really meaningful insight.
And are you using that for personalization as well?
Personalization, I would say today we are still really adopting solutions from our vendor partners. And this will be something I'll talk about at Shoptalk actually, is our personalization strategy, because I think it's maybe one of the most generic terms. Like, what does it mean? How does it come to life?
Personalization, I think like it always comes to personalizing an email
right,
or what the customer going to see in their homepage or something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we're kind of taking a tact around defining personalization and what it means for us and what the relevant touch points are. So I'll talk a little bit more about that. But I think AI is really like the next phase of it for us is just simplifying some of the complex and stitching together some of the tooling that we already have. So more to come on that one.
Interesting. I can't wait to see the talk and the results after that. One thing that is very interesting about that I had no idea is that your website also offers video commerce.
Yes.
First, what is it and what was the experience?
Yes. So this is something we started doing in the US. I think we're now about a year in. So kudos to the US team for jumping on this. And it's really been a cross-functional effort. So it's not just one kind of area of the business that's led it, but we definitely have had champions from within. So we came to market with some video commerce content in partnership with Nike. So we have a women's platform called Need It Now, and it's really about like inspiration, and it's about kind of, the ethos of the JD brand, which is athletic brands through a fashion lens. So landing that with video commerce is so exciting because it's so inspired, right? It's so inspirational. There's a lot you can do with movement, with, that type of content that just like brings it to life. And so our women's platform was a perfect place to do it. We have a partnership with Nike where we want to bring their product to market in a really compelling way. And so that's where we started. And we started with really short form, like on the PLP or on a landing page, just like our influencers, creating on our behalf.
So it's not a live streaming?
Not yet.
Okay.
So, and really, because I think that video commerce is so intimidating of a prospect to get into. So we were like, let's dip our toe, let's start and see if we get people to engage in this content that's like, pre-produced and whatever. So our next phase is actually more long form, kind of digital showrooms and starting to explore that space. And I feel like like in retail, we've been, at least retail in Western Europe and the US, we've been on the cusp of hearing like live shopping is the thing, like that's, and it's happening in Asia, hasn't really taken flight with any notable retailer like, in the US so far. So I think we just want to be ready. We want to know what works, what doesn't for our customer. And so we're testing that next.
There was one retailer I interviewed that they started with live commerce, with live streamings, and they saw a big influx of new people coming to their stores because of the live stream. So it wasn't...
Yeah, I love that.
They were looking for ways to monetize the live streaming. They were expecting that people would buy as the live stream is happening, but actually it happened the other way.
Oh, that's such a good point. I mean, and it's back to kind of what we were saying about like brand health and brand love, these things that are more down funnel where you think it's going to drive revenue and how you measure it. Like, how do you measure success of video commerce if it's not really creating revenue value, but in the end it's driving people to a store? Those are the more long-term, like more complex KPIs that we have to measure, right? Because I think it's not linear. So that's a great example.
Yeah, and I think the reason we talk so much about digital transformation is because everybody has to digitalize, but there's a lot of, as we're talking, replatforming and everything. How do you set the long-term views and the short-term views? Like, how do you separate those?
Yeah, well, I think you have to evolve to understand that change is constant. And I myself am still in this transformation, because we talk about digital transformation and it could equate to just a replatform, right? And you almost think like, okay, well, there's the start goal and then there's the end goal and we deliver it and then we're done. And actually that's never true, right? And this is what I love about like the digital aspect of retail as well, or any aspect of it truly, is that you're just constantly evolving. So I think it's a mindset shift to know that change is constant. And I think it's the capacity to both have like a track of change and transformation that is long-term and ongoing, while simultaneously delivering on quick wins that meet customer expectations along the way, right? You can't wrap up every single thing you want to do into this like long-term big bang, now we're going to land it. You've got to be ready to, have constant hits that are going to improve your experience and engage.
You can have your roots too deep.
Yes, exactly. Yes, exactly. So that's where we look to like our vendor partners to really be able to integrate quickly, be able to help us, enable speed to market, help us do things in a light and fast way, as we also take on the simultaneous like big system changes that we need to do to stay relevant.
And stores are changing a lot, right? I think the role of the stores have been changing a lot.
Yeah.
Retail in general changed a lot, but I think the role of the stores have been specifically something different that retailers can have. How do you see the role of store for JD?
Yeah. So as our head of digital, my digital responsibility, I like to say this because I think it matters, is that I think stores are the most important asset for JD. And they're the most important asset for our digital experience as well. And that's because they represent the brand. They're the way most customers experience our brand, or like how you build brand awareness. Also, they're fulfillment centers. They're spaces for retail theater. They're spaces to engage, right? And we have over 10,000 associates who are in these stores who are actually like promoting our brand daily, right? So I think stores are the most critical piece of our experience. And I think that JD has always excelled at retail, like operational excellence, although that's not really sexy, doing the easy things really well, right? Like stocking the shop floor, having, your assortments really well merchandised, like those kind of things matter.
The roots of retail, right?
The roots of retail,
exactly.
Yeah. I mean, and JD has always really nailed that, right? So I think there's a lot of discipline within that process that even, I will say, when JD came to the US, we were able to adopt, with selling apparel, et cetera. But I think the role of retail has changed to become more significant from, how do you engage customers beyond just that shop floor experience? And so we're thinking about back to the unified commerce idea, like how do we stitch together that journey and create ease, reduce friction, and also hopefully inspire through digital touch points while customers are in the store and before and afterward as well. And we have, a team that's dedicated to kind of the in-store digital experience, they are just maniacal about creation and inspiration and thinking about, we have a store coming in Las Vegas this spring. Like, how are they going to make that the most exciting, most engaging, expression of the JD brand possible? So
are these events or just the
No, I mean, a lot of it is the store environment, right? So yes, events, yes, local relevance. How do you create hype? I mean, we have DJs in a lot of our, major stores, which is so fun. So the stores are expressing the brand in that way, but also just like the content and the screens. And if you go to our Stratford store in East London, like the digital content snakes up the escalator in an entirely new way, and the team designed it, right? The team had this vision. They're like, how could we do something so cool and so difficult? And they're always challenging themselves. So it's just a fun place to play in.
That's amazing. And one question that I always ask, because I think it's one of the hardest parts, is leadership and team alignment.
Oh, yeah.
How do you build this? First, I think the mindset for innovation and transformation. And second, high performance.
Yeah. I have had the great pleasure in this role specifically of getting to build a leadership team. So often you inherit a lot of leaders, right? And because of the nature of when I started this role and kind of the function that needed to be built, I've gotten to bring in or elevate some really high-performing leaders. So I think that leadership culture, leadership discipline, the focus around that is equally important to any kind of, technical experience or subject matter expertise or skill set, and I really preach that with my teams. So I think number one, it's about what type of leaders do you support and promote and recruit,
and what type of leaders?
Oh my gosh, I love this. Yeah. So for me, it's really about people who are willing to set aside ego, who are super humble in how they show up, and are really transparent about, what they know, what they don't know, and what they're willing to know. So I think it's a mindset related to that, because that creates a team who's willing to work together, not just within my own, digital team, but then outside into the business, right? And so we want to be in service to the partnerships across the business. So building that is sometimes tough, but I think that's what we're committed to. And then I think customer centricity, people who are willing to get into the shops and go understand what the JD experience really looks like, right? Or people who are really willing to understand the impact of their decisions downstream on what does that look like from a customer experience standpoint, right? So I think
better than just take headquarters decisions and
right,
be like,
exactly.
This is the best for the business.
And it's so easy. I mean, I like to look at our, our KPIs and to look at your revenue and to kind of distance yourself from it, from behind a screen. And so I think just that willingness to root back to what matters, which is how are we responsible for bringing to market the best products in the world? And is that inspired? Is it fun? Is it engaging, right? And is it easy for the consumer? So I think leaders who can kind of really just remind themselves of the simple things like that, and then can do it, without ego and with the right attitudes.
That's beautiful. Without
Thanks.
ego was the first time I ever heard here. So and that's a valid point. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Also, with so many people leading a transformation or thinking about leading a transformation, what would be your advice to them?
Wow. I think just going back to, there's two things. First of all, the leadership team, right? Do you have the right talent? And there's the talent and the discipline of those folks who are going to be dedicated to actually executing it, because transformation is so cross-functional. And so you have to have leaders who are willing to have friction amongst themselves, but also do it in a way that's productive, and be outcome focused. And then I think it's also back to that mindset that change is constant, and knowing that there's no specific finish line, right? But that it's an ongoing process. And so people who are dedicated to kind of to change management and change leadership, and always kind of living in that space where you're constantly, improving.
Yeah, but that's so hard. So many leaders will stay there, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And now I have our quickfire questions.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Great, yes.
So you just respond, you just answer with whatever comes to your mind.
Okay.
This is also new to this season.
Okay, great. Exciting.
What's the last thing you bought online?
Oh my goodness. Well, I'm outfitting a new home. So I have been on the hunt for a lot of rugs, which is a crazy thing that you can now buy online. Like 10 years ago, you really couldn't. And so I've just gone totally crazy on a bunch of home items. I even bought a couch online. I bought my mattresses online. So
do they have the right measure and everything? I'll have to go through it.
It has worked so
next
well.
month.
No, it's beautiful. It's incredible what you can do now. Like just like having, and I didn't see a lot of this stuff in real life. So it has been pretty impressive to see a mattress come in a box that's like this big and then explode into a king size. So yeah, I've been outfitting a home and I've been going real crazy on all that stuff right now.
Good. And what is one tech trend in retail you're most excited about?
At the risk of seeming really commercial right now, I just have to say like retail media. And I know that that's not that like inspired, but I think that the space for it is just expansive. And I think that there's just so many like new things for us to learn and to play and to create like really rich revenue streams. So I think probably retail
especially
media.
in sports, I think it's such a
Absolutely.
growing.
And it's like and it's not just the monetization, it's the partnerships across it, right? Because when I think about JD, we're a part of an ecosystem, right? And that ecosystem is relevant, sports, music, fashion, culture. So there's a lot of ways to connect the dots via retail media with that concept.
Very exciting. And a brand you think is doing digital really well besides JD?
I mean, I think a lot of the furniture stores, like I'm going to say Joybird as an example. It's like they have showrooms, right? There's a lot of furniture stores that are doing like in-person showrooms, and they have an incredible digital experience that kind of mirrors back to it. And so I'm really impressed with how they've thought about the footprint in retail and how that complements the digital business. And actually, I did a lot of research for some items and then went into the store to like see and touch and feel it, right? And so I just think the complementary nature of what those guys are doing is really impressive.
I guess, do you also get so obsessed with customer journeys
Yes.
working with it?
Yes,
Like, every
absolutely.
time.
Absolutely. Well, it's the continuity of it, right? I want to know, and there's a lot of clienteling across it. Like, I want you to know that I came into your store and I looked at these items, right? And then when I go back online, like I want to see that track. So it's inspired, and as we were talking about personalization, I think that's a massive component of it, is like, am I known across all ecosystems, right? And in a business like that, it's, how do you add value? By creating value in each channel, it becomes like, 1 + 1 = 3.
Awesome. And what is your go-to sneaker or fashion brand?
I have a pair of AJ1 mochas that I really wish I had bought multiple pairs of, because it's my absolute favorite shoe. It's so versatile and neutral and beautiful, and it's a high top sneaker, which is pretty unique for me. So that's my favorite, and I worry about wearing it out, but I do wear all my sneakers, even my like kind of really like rare ones. So that's my favorite sneaker. My favorite retailer right now is probably Cezanne. I just love them. I think it's beautiful. I think the packaging is spectacular. Like, I think all the touches are really special. So I'm into that.
See, this one you didn't like, you knew it straight. Like,
Girl,
you know when she
I know
loves
how to
it.
shop. Yeah, I always have some favorites there.
What is the best career advice you've ever received?
Oh my gosh. So I do a lot of outreach in our business with informally mentees with development programs. And so I find myself constantly asked that question. And I think it's two things. I think number one, it's about relationships. So it's not what you know, it's who you know. And I don't mean that superficially, because you also have to have a lot of substance, right? So you have to work hard. You have to know your SHIT, like you got to have substance. And also you have to prove that to people in the room. And you have to have people who are going to be your sponsors and your advocates when you're not there. So it's the most straightforward, simple kind of like networking message. But every important role that I have held has been because I've built a relationship with a leader who has respected my potential. Not necessarily the what, but like they knew that I had the willingness and, the ability to kind of learn and grow. So that's the first piece of it. And then the second is really just, I think you have to leave yourself open to possibilities and be an opportunist when it comes to your career. I think if you have a really linear or rigid vision, it's hard to make that come to life. And you can't design the perfect career. And so you have to say, what is going to, be curious. What's going to help me grow? Where can I add the most value? What can I get from this? And what will I take from it? And then just, I think, start to kind of go from there.
And now our last one. One thing most people don't know about you.
I sometimes hold this information back because it sometimes has shock value, but I was actually born in Fairbanks, Alaska. So in the frigid north, and it was 50 degrees below zero the day I was born. So I'm from like a very remote, bizarre place. And at a point in my life, thought that I would live in Alaska forever. And I love it there. It's an incredible place, but it's very isolated and the career opportunities are very limited. And so my early years, my first 18 years of my life were spent, pretty much in Alaska. So very, very like rare start, very interesting beginnings for where I've kind of ended up in this global career.
That's actually the first time we hear that too.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Well, I'm sure this cold in London is nothing for you then.
Yeah, right. Well, it doesn't mean I love the cold. I'm still kind of a wimp right now with the cold. So
awesome. Arianne, thank you so much.
Thank you, Paula.
It was a pleasure.
Thanks. Likewise.